What if your everyday messages flowed through a hidden global listening system? In 2013, a former contractor named Edward Snowden leaked thousands of secret documents. Journalists at The Guardian and The Washington Post published the files. Those documents revealed how intelligence agencies collected vast streams of communications. The leaks forced a global conversation about privacy, law, and technology. Over the next minutes, we'll unpack the key programs, the technical tricks, and why those revelations still matter today, starting with who Snowden actually worked with. Snowden was a systems administrator and contractor who had deep access to internal tools. He copied classified slides, memos, and diagrams over months. His job let him see both legal authorities and technical architectures. He chose journalists rather than the government to publish the material. That decision set off legal, ethical, and policy storms. Next, we break down the first major program the leaks revealed and what it actually did. PRISM was a process, not a magic backdoor into every company server. Under FISA Section 702, analysts issued selectors like email addresses. Tech companies then provided data matching those selectors. This could include emails, stored files, and chats for targets believed to be foreign. Americans' data sometimes showed up incidentally. The key revelation was legal compulsion plus centralized cloud flows. Up next, imagine collecting messages from the pipes themselves. Upstream collection intercepted communications as they moved over backbone cables. Think of the internet's main pipes and switches. Instead of asking companies, agencies monitored traffic points where many providers cross. That meant not just one app, but whole streams of data could be captured. The leaks showed how choke points in the network made large-scale collection feasible. But collection was only half the story. How do you search millions of intercepted items quickly? The next program gives the answer. XKEYSCORE looked like a search engine for intercepted traffic. Analysts could query keywords, email addresses, or cookie values. It turned raw packets and metadata into searchable records. The tool highlighted a simple fact. The problem was not missing data, but finding needles in an enormous haystack. Filters and selectors became the real power. But the leaks also revealed tools that visualized that haystack on a global map. That revelation changed public perception instantly. Boundless Enfoyment was a heat map of metadata collection across countries. The slide showed colored blobs and tallies, making invisible surveillance feel concrete. Suddenly, citizens and judges could see how much metadata was being gathered. That visual evidence helped fuel media coverage and court challenges. It also pushed technologists to think differently about what metadata can reveal. Next, we examine a program that bypassed typical user protections entirely. Muscular targeted private links between major companies' data centers. Those internal links were often unencrypted then. By tapping them, agencies could access copies of user data before edge encryption applied. The shock for tech companies was immediate. Google and Yahoo responded by encrypting traffic between their own servers. That technical change had cascading effects for internet security. But there was another surprising domestic program exposed that relied on metadata instead of content. The Domestic Bulk Telephony Metadata Program collected call records at scale. It tracked who called whom, when, and for how long. Analysts argued it helped investigations, while critics said it offered little unique value. Metadata alone can map social networks, travel patterns, and routines. The Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board later questioned its usefulness. That debate forced a basic question. How sensitive is metadata really? Next, we look at the unseen trust issues in cryptography standards. Snowden's files suggested intelligence influence over cryptographic standards. The dual EC-DRBG random generator controversy was a wake-up call. If standards bodies get compromised, every system relying on them becomes fragile. NIST later reformed processes and removed tainted algorithms. The episode taught engineers and policymakers that cryptography is technical math and governance at once. That realization pushed firms and standards groups to tighten transparency, but the work wasn't finished. The leaks illuminated a structural problem: scale. The internet funnels vast conversations through a small set of providers and cables. Laws written in the analog age struggled with cloud-era flows. targeted orders still swept up bystanders' data. That combination meant modern surveillance harvested patterns at population scale. Once you see metadata maps and backbone taps together, the stakes look different. The public reaction led to concrete legal and corporate changes, which we'll cover next in a quick recap. In Europe, the leaks changed transatlantic data rules. The Court of Justice struck down Safe Harbor and later Privacy Shield. Those rulings forced new legal frameworks and stronger safeguards for EU citizens. Governments also pushed back with surveillance laws. Like the UK's Investigatory Powers Act, countries negotiated the Cloud Act for cross-border access. The outcome: data flows became political flashpoints, and companies learned to publish transparency reports. Next, we look at how industry hardened itself technically. Tech companies shifted strategy quickly. They encrypted links between data centers and deployed HTTPS more broadly. The message was simple: make passive bulk collection harder. Engineers adopted perfect forward secrecy and enforced HSTS. Companies also began publishing transparency reports showing government requests. These pragmatic moves reduced easy access for interceptors. But improving transport encryption was only part of a larger security transformation that made the internet itself more hostile to dragnet spying. Let's Encrypt democratized TLS certificates by removing cost and friction. Small websites could enable HTTPS overnight. That change multiplied secure connections across the web. Google's push and browser warnings nudged site owners further. As encrypted traffic rose, passive eavesdroppers found their job harder. That contributed to a larger shift toward default security. But the most visible shift was in messaging apps, where end-to-end encryption went mainstream. Signal's protocol and WhatsApp's adoption brought end-to-end encryption to billions. Apple continued to secure iMessage and later reinforced iCloud protections. With these defaults, server-side collection became less fruitful. Law enforcement raised alarms about going dark, claiming investigations would be impaired. Technologists responded that weakening encryption endangers everyone. This tug-of-war between privacy and access remains unresolved. Next, we examine how standards bodies formalized that pushback. Standards groups declared pervasive monitoring an attack. RFC 7258 reframed surveillance as a threat model to mitigate. TLS 1.3 removed outdated ciphers and improved handshake privacy. DNS privacy via DNS over HTTPS and DNS over TLS reduced metadata leaks. New work like encrypted client hello hides handshake details. These changes took years, but the trajectory became clear. Design protocols assuming adversaries could monitor traffic. The focus moved from secrecy about code to architectural choices that limit mass collection. Snowden also exposed a policy dilemma around 0 days and vulnerability hoarding. Intelligence agencies sometimes retained unknown flaws for offensive use. Critics argued those bugs should be disclosed to vendors. The vulnerabilities equities process aimed to balance national security with public safety by formalizing disclosure decisions. The VET didn't end the debate, but it introduced a public procedure. The next scene explores the debates that still dominate policy conversations today. A decade on, the core tensions remain: privacy versus access. Section 702 continues under renewed authorization, and critics worry about incidental collection and U.S. person queries. Law enforcement argues investigators need access, while technologists warn against structural backdoors. Some governments propose scanning or exceptional access for safety reasons. Those proposals raise hard technical and legal questions. The debate forces societies to choose how the internet should be built and who holds the keys. But there are practical things you can do now. You don't need to be an expert to improve your privacy. Use end-to-end encrypted messaging for daily chats, enable strong multi-factor authentication, and use a password manager. Keep devices updated and review app permissions. Consider privacy-oriented browsers and DNS over HTTPS. For organizations, encrypt data at rest, minimize collection, and practice zero trust. Threat modeling helps prioritize actions. Small steps stack quickly, and together they make mass dragnet collection less effective. But there's one final lesson. The Snowden leaks rewired public expectations around surveillance and security. They pushed companies to harden systems and courts to reassess legal frameworks. They also taught a crucial point: architecture matters. Choices about where to route traffic, what to store, and how to encrypt determine privacy outcomes. The leaks didn't end surveillance, but they made the conversation public. That shift means citizens now influence policy and design decisions in ways that were rare before, and the story keeps unfolding. If you remember one takeaway, build with privacy in mind from the start. Minimize data collection, encrypt by default, and demand transparency from services. Encourage firms to publish clear policies and practice responsible disclosure of vulnerabilities. Public engagement matters. Votes, litigation, and standards work change the architecture. Snowden's leaks showed that knowledge reshapes power. The final choice is collective. What kind of online world do we want to live in going forward? If this helped, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments one privacy step you'll adopt this week.